The Queen's Jewish Link presents the Jewish Living Podcast, the show that examines the many facets of Orthodox Jewish life. Here's your host, Izzo Zwirin.
Well, look at that. We have another bonus episode for you on a Thursday. As many of you know, this month, New York City will be holding primaries for the mayoral office. But there's another position up for a vote as well. We are fortunate enough to have on one of the candidates for New York City Comptroller.
I'm Assemblyman David Weprin, and I'm running for New York City Comptroller in the Democratic primary on June 22nd.
Assemblyman Weprin will discuss the important issues facing New Yorkers and what he is doing about it. I know a lot of you out there do not live in New York City and won't be voting in this election, but if you know anyone who could benefit from the episode, please send it over to them so they can be educated on some of the topics being discussed. Mr. Weprin, thank you so much for joining us this week, and an incredibly, important time for you, running in a primary election that's going to be happening shortly after this episode airs. If you can give me a little bit of background on yourself. Obviously, you're in the State Assembly right now, but even before that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a product of Yeshiva. I went to Yeshiva of Central Queens. My wife actually went to Yeshiva of Central Queens as well, but we didn't know each other. She's a couple of years younger than me, so we didn't really know each other back then. And all my children went to YCQ and to various yeshiva high schools across the city. I'm Shomer Shabbos. I belong to two young Israels. You can't be a politician and join one shul. You got to join, I guess, at least two. So I'm a member of the Young Israel of Jamaica States and the Young Israel of Holliswood. I'm actually equidistant between the two shuls, so it's not unreasonable to belong to both shuls.
And what about professionally? You've been in the State Assembly for a while now, but what about before that?
Yeah, I'm an attorney by training. I went to Hofstra Law School, and then I went into the Governor Mario Cuomo's administration as Deputy Superintendent of Banking or Deputy Commissioner of Banking for New York State, and that was in the 1980s, from 1983 to 1987. And then I went on to a 20-year plus Wall Street career in municipal finance, in public finance, with major firms, 6 firms in all. Then I got elected to the City Council in 2001. I immediately became chair of the Finance Committee, a position I held for 8 consecutive years. Then I got elected to the New York State Assembly in February 2010 in a special election. And I've been in the Assembly now for over 11 years. And I chair the Corrections Committee. I used to chair the Committee on People with Disabilities. And I've also been on the Assembly Ways and Means Committee.
All right, so you're running now for Comptroller. This is not inherently a political podcast. So I'd like you to explain for my listeners, what is a Comptroller? What does a Comptroller do?
The Comptroller is the Chief Financial Officer of New York City, to kind of keep it simplistic. But you have many roles. One of the most important roles is oversight over all New York City agencies, which are controlled by the mayor through the audit function. You sign all contracts with New York City, so you have a check over the mayor in that respect as well. And you're primarily responsible for the investment of the 5 pension funds, which represent over $250 billion, $250 billion cumulatively of pension assets for over 700,000 retired pensioners, one of which is my mother, who just turned 91. She's a retired teacher. She was a Cuban Jewish immigrant to this country. She came here at the age of 8 in 1938. She only spoke 2 languages. She spoke Spanish and Yiddish when she came here. And then she became a public school teacher, and she now has a teacher's pension.
So I want to focus on one thing you said in that, and that is it's a check on the mayor. So when I was thinking that the primary reason why people should be aware and invested in who the controller is because this is a check on other agencies and other individuals in the New York City government. So it does matter for those listening. It does matter who the controller is. It's not just, oh, it's another elected official that's going to be part of the cabinet. It's a separate entity that provides a check. Is that correct?
That is correct. Absolutely correct.
All right, so let's talk about your actual community goals. Let's start with a general overview of what your goals are, and then we'll whittle it down to specific issues that you're looking at. So I'll ask you, what are your primary platforms that you're looking for?
My primary platforms is to use the audit function more effectively and more frequently. The New York City Charter only requires the controller to audit some aspect of every city agency once every 4 years. That is not enough. We should be looking to do annual audits. The audit division is the largest division in the controller's office. They have 150 employees. They have 100 auditors. And I think we can effectively use those auditors and, if necessary, hire additional auditors because they will more than pay for themselves through the money that they find in savings. I want to audit every city agency every year. And I also want to go after the large outside contracts that are often never audited by the city. And there's a lot of waste and mismanagement in some of those outside contracts.
I think a lot of people would be very happy with finding extra money that now what would happen with that money if you were able to find this outside money that we might not have had, and does that have an effect on taxpayers?
Absolutely. One is if we're anticipating with this COVID-19 fiscal crisis, we are okay for this coming budget in the city, which starts July 1st. We were okay with the state budget that we adopted in April, only because we got substantial aid in the billions. If you count all the stimulus money, about $16 billion in aid from Washington. So we're okay for this year, but it's a one-shot deal. It's a one-year bailout if you want, and we're going to be in tough fiscal straits starting next year for the next 4 years or so, at least through the controller's first term. If we don't balance the budget properly, if we don't get a minimum of 7% return on the pension funds, it's up to the city to make up the difference, and that could potentially result in budget cuts or in layoffs. And we could have a situation like we had in New York City in the 1970s, where we actually had built new libraries and new schools, but they never opened. There's a library actually right near where I live on Union Turnpike in Fresh Meadows that never opened in '75. And ironically, that was actually where the Young Israel of Jamaica State started their minyan because we started in 1975 and we needed a building. And my late father, Saul Weprin, who had the assembly seat I have and became Speaker of the Assembly, he actually negotiated with the city to allow the Young Israel of Jamaica Estates to open in that library, which they did for about a year.
We didn't go into your family history, but I know your father and your brother also was in the assembly before you. It's a little family business up in Albany.
Well, look, it's public service. It's something I was taught at an early age. I mean, how many times do we see police officers that have fathers and grandfathers that were police officers? Same thing with the fire department. It's not unusual for families involved in a particular area of public service follow in the footsteps of their parents.
Right. I guess we have a governor that did that too.
That is true too.
So I want to ask you a few general questions and then specific questions that are related to the Jewish community. So first of all, a place that's near and dear to my heart, which is healthcare. I work in healthcare full time. That's my actual job. So I was wondering what your plans are to assist people who need the help paying their healthcare bills and making sure that it doesn't leak out into other areas of their life.
Look, it's important. We've done a lot of legislation over the years to help people with healthcare. A lot of it is governed by the federal government, but certainly it's important that everybody know what programs are available. And one of the things actually I'm going to do as controller is open up a borough office in every borough. We'll have one in Queens, in the Bronx, in Brooklyn, in Staten Island, because I want to use those borough offices to bring the controller's office to the public, bring it to small businesses, which are devastated by COVID-19. Actually, more than 50% of the jobs in New York City come out of small businesses. We have 760 employees in the controller's office, so I want to move some of those employees into the borough offices. And I want the borough offices to actually focus on reviving small businesses post-COVID-19 and allowing small businesses, including healthcare companies, access to the various programs that are now available from the federal government, from the state government, from the city government. And somebody kind of needs a roadmap. And I would like those borough offices to focus on those businesses in the boroughs. So, that's one of the focuses I want those borough offices to have.
Okay. The other area is the MTA. Now, one area that is an interesting part of this is that I think that a subway ride in New York City is probably cheaper than any other major metropolitan area in the country that has a subway. I know that Washington, D.C. is much more expensive for a ride. Is the MTA operating on a fiscal loss? Is it breaking even? Is it earning money, or is that something that we need to look at, that we might expect some fare hikes in the future?
Well, no, it had been operating at a loss. They were essentially bankrupt until Washington bailed them out separately from the bailout of New York City and New York State. I think they got probably about $6 billion in direct aid from the federal government, which is one of the reasons. And all along, I was arguing against congestion pricing. That was one of my issues in both the city council and the assembly, fighting against congestion pricing, because it indiscriminately penalized the boroughs outside of Manhattan. A lot of my assembly district, for example, borders on Nassau County, goes right out in Belrose and Glen Oaks to the Nassau border. And there's no subway in Eastern Queens. The nearest subway is 179th Street in Jamaica. And there are a lot of people in Eastern Queens that actually, had to take 2 buses to the train to get to Manhattan. And it took sometimes 2 hours to get there, while you could still drive within an hour. Even though there'd be a lot of traffic, it wouldn't be a pleasant experience of driving, but you certainly could get there in half the time. And that's why I fought congestion pricing, because I looked at it as another tax on the middle class and on people that felt they had to drive into Manhattan. It also was an extra tax on small businesses. And now they're all hurting from COVID-19, because they used to do multiple deliveries through the free bridges to save money. And if they had to pay tolls, they pass it on to the consumers, and they couldn't always recoup it. So I fought till the very end against congestion pricing. And now I'm asking for a delay, at least until small businesses come back, from this pandemic.
Can you just explain what congestion pricing is?
Yeah, congestion pricing was basically charging drivers or businesses driving into Manhattan below 60th Street. In other words, it would be an extra toll, and the amount has not been determined yet, so we don't even know what that amount would be, but it would be, extra money that you'd have to pay if you actually cross the 60th Street line. I think there was a way you could take the FDR Drive and go up to Westchester when you went without paying that extra toll, but for the most part, would be driving anywhere in Manhattan below 60th Street, and you could be charged at just driving in that zone.
Would that have added a toll to like the Queensboro Bridge?
It would have been effectively a toll to the Queensboro Bridge, to the Manhattan Bridge, the Williamsburg Bridge, and the Brooklyn Bridge. Okay. Because normally, if you want to go to below 60th Street, you could get there for free from Brooklyn or Queens. Now you won't be able to, because you'll be charged when you cross that zone, whether you take the bridge or not.
Right. Okay. So let's shift over to some topics that are related to the frum community. So one of the things that we actually spoke about several times on this podcast was yeshiva tuition. I was wondering if there's anything that you're looking to do to help ease the burden of tuition paying parents for yeshivas or in any private school setting.
Yeah, I've been pushing for tax credit for many years. The United Federation of Teachers always opposes it, and they're a pretty powerful lobby. But I've been pushing for that tax credit. I also push for. We had an almost passed a couple of years ago. The governor was pushing it, the educational income tax credit, which would basically allow donors to make contributions to yeshiva and get a direct tax deduction, which would help as far as tuition. So I also supported various programs to allow money, pre-tax money, similar to these programs for college saver programs. They have college saver programs that were run by the state controller's office, which allow you to pay tuition for college, specifically from pre-tax dollars. So there was a tax benefit for that, and there would be like a fund set aside that you could tap into that fund. I think that should apply for private school and yeshiva tuition as well, because we all know, even when you're dealing with kindergarten and first grade, it's a huge burden, and if you have many kids, it's a tremendous burden. So you should be able to establish these special funds from pre-tax dollars, that could earn interest and investment and until they're tapped into, and that money should be able to be used specifically for yeshiva tuition. So that's another thing I've been arguing for.
How realistic is that part to being able to be passed?
I think that one is more realistic in some ways, because I don't see why the UFT should oppose it, but they do. But the problem, with UFT should look at, and I've said this at many conventions and many forums, that if everybody that sent their kids to yeshiva decided to send their kids to public school couldn't handle it. There are 1.1 million public school students. If you added 400,000 or 500,000 yeshiva students in one shot, it would devastate the public school system, and they couldn't afford it. And actually, they're spending more money per student than even the yeshivas. So they'd be saving a lot of money by allowing some of these tax benefits for the yeshiva parents, and yeshiva parents pay the same taxes as public school parents and everyone else. So, I think it would be a fair thing to do. But there are other things we've done to help yeshivas in general that have been determined to be okay, and we've done it, increasing it every year. There's money in the budget every year, in the state budget, called mandated services money, where we've actually increased money for STEM, programs, for books, for computers, for food, for breakfast, for lunch. So there are increasingly transportation, bus services. So we've increased aid every year to yeshivas, in private schools, something that's been recognized and has had more support overall.
All right. So another issue that people in our community and the entire city at this point are worried about is law enforcement and public safety. How would the controller's office help to ensure the public safety? And you specifically, how would you deal with the police force, especially during these times of calling for defunding the police or removing funding of the police or reallocating funding from the police?
I'm actually the only candidate in my race that's not supporting reducing police headcount and defunding the police. Two of my opponents actually led the fight to cut $1 billion from the budget last year, the police budget, and actually we're down 3,000 police officers in the last year, 3,000. I'm the only one in my race that's been advocating for more police, not less police. And that's why actually I've been endorsed by every police union. There are 5 police unions. PBA is the largest, but you also have the captains union, the lieutenants union, the sergeants union, and the detective union. So, and I've been endorsed by all 5 of those police unions. And I have a debate today. I'm going to bring it up. I think the way to solve the surge in crime is to hire more police officers, not less, and not to cut back.
So we're recording this, just so people know, on the 9th. We're going to try to release this on the 10th, which there's another debate. So people who are listening to this are not going to be able to know about that debate through this particular episode, but where can they catch the one on Thursday the 10th?
Thursday the 10th is New York 1. It's going to be played, it's going to be filmed, done live on New York 1, Thursday evening. I don't have the exact time. I think it might be 6 o'clock.
Okay.
And then they're going to replay it again, or it might be 7 o'clock, and they're going to replay it again at 11 o'clock at night. So it'll be on New York 1. This one will be on WABC radio.
Okay. And what do you know if they'll be able to, people able to find the debates online, a replay of them?
Yeah, I think so. Even the radio debate is being live streamed, so you can get it.
All right. The last area that I want to ask you about is anti-Semitism and racism in general. There's been a lot of attacks, not just on Jews over the last couple of months. The Asian community has felt it. We even had Congresswoman Grace Meng on the show talking about the similarities between anti-Semitism and anti-Asian American racism. I was wondering what the Comptroller's office can do to help mitigate some of these attacks.
Well, again, I think we need, if we're looking at audits and analyzing places, the police department, has a hate crimes unit. I think there's a lot more we can do to strengthen that unit. As we look in, as I said, I'm committed to auditing every agency every year. And the police department is one of those agencies. What I would like to do is do a performance audit and try to focus on the hate crimes unit, which I think should be strengthened. I actually, on the legislative side, I introduced a bill in the legislature to exempt hate crimes, even misdemeanor hate crimes, because once you have hate crimes, even if it's only swastikas or anti-Asian graffiti, that leads to other things, and it's important that we treat it seriously, even if it's only a misdemeanor. I think it's important that we exempt it from the no cash bail law. So I have a bill to that effect. And I think it's important that it be prosecuted to the full extent of the law. And too many of these all these hate mongers and assaults are repeat offenders, and then you somehow see them over and over again. So, I know the Borgen family, that 29-year-old young man, Joey Borgen. I know the family very well, who was assaulted. I understand they caught the guy who was a repeat offender. And I think it's important that he do jail time, significant jail time, hopefully, and not come back. But, I think we have to take prosecution of those type of individuals that commit hate crimes very seriously.
Yeah, we actually had Joey on the show a few weeks ago, right after it happened, right after he was released from the hospital. So yes, we're familiar with that story 100%. And does the Comptroller's office have a say in how bail goes and bail reform and in things like that?
Not directly, but you are one of 3 citywide elected officials, so you do have a bully pulpit. You can take positions on various issues and speak out as an elected citywide official. So, I think you have kind of a moral obligation as a citywide elected official to speak out on those type of issues.
Okay. Is there anything else that you would like to let everybody know about? Things that I didn't cover, something that's not necessarily even in the realm of the Comptroller's office? I'll give you a few minutes to say anything you would like.
Well, basically, I've obviously been involved in the Orthodox community for many years, my whole life, actually, and, very committed to helping, the Orthodox community, as I did for 8 years in the city council when I chaired the finance committee. All 8 years, did many, many capital projects and many expense projects for various not-for-profits in the Orthodox community. As Comptroller, you're responsible for basically signing contracts with the city and trying to get individual not-for-profits paid. And one of the complaints against the Comptroller's office has been that it often takes up to a year for a not-for-profit to get reimbursed for money that they've laid out, and that's totally unacceptable. All bills should be paid within 30 days. And I'm committed to that for all not-for-profits. But, we're going to be in this fiscal crisis, as I mentioned, for another 3, 4, 5 years. And I think it's important that we have someone with the relevant finance experience, both public and private sector, to help bring us out of it. And I want to play a major contribution in bringing us out of this post-COVID-19 pandemic fiscally. And I want to help the city that I love, that I've lived in my entire life, and want to see it come back.
All right, thank you so much. Out of curiosity, this is just the election in June is a primary. Is there a Republican opponent?
There may be a Republican opponent, but I don't think it'll be a competitive race. There's certainly nobody that's out there on the radar, and the overwhelming population of Democrats in New York City basically effectively means that whoever wins the Democratic primary, I would say for mayor or controller, will be the next mayor and will be the next controller. So I would urge all voters, all listeners of yours, if they are registered Democrats, to please come out on June 22nd or early voting before or absentee voting, because that is actually going to decide who the next controller and the next mayor is going to be.
And the controller's office also is on ranked choice voting?
The controller's office is also on ranked choice voting. You're not required, though, to do ranked choice. You could vote for only one. The only thing you can't do is vote for that one person more than once, because that'll invalidate your ballot.
So make sure you only write your candidate one time.
Correct.
Okay. All right, Assemblyman David Weprin, thank you so much for joining us this week, and good luck to you in the election.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
My thanks to Assemblyman David Weprin for joining me for this discussion. The New York City primary is Tuesday, June 22nd, but early voting starts this weekend. Remember to make your voices heard, and until next time, Kol Tov.
The Jewish Living Podcast is produced by Sreli Paikus. Our theme song is The Band by A.B. Rottenberg. Follow us on Facebook at The Jewish Living Podcast and on Twitter and Instagram at Jewish_living. You can also email the show at jewishlivingpodcast@gmail.com. The Jewish Living Podcast is recorded in conjunction with the Queens Jewish Link.